All right. So this is excellent. This is the first time that I've gone live for this stream for this purpose. I appreciate anybody that decides to watch this video. This is going to be the mission statement for the podcast that we have going on. So I have myself and my companion Amar Joshi. Go ahead and say hello, Amar.
Yo, what's up? Good to be here. Nice to be the inaugural guest, I guess.
Amar, why don't you go ahead and plug yourself real quick so we can get
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I mean, all platforms, Amar J. Joshi. That is right. You've got two J's, and then it's a little bit confusing, but I snagged it. So Amar J. Joshi. That's AMARJJOSHI. There you go.
Excellent.
Go for it.
And you're a video game streamer. You do content for gaming mostly.
Oh yeah, I mean, I am 200 game reviews deep at this point. I've got way too many videos to check out. I've got a whole set of Warframe streams to check out. I'm planning a whole big Warframe shift on my YouTube channel in the next couple months because, I'm inching closer to that partner status. So that's the goal right now, folks.
Good.
Lock in and we're going for it.
So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Donovan, and I have been quite a few things in my life. I have been I currently am a fitness professional. I work at a place called the Exercise Coach in North Carolina. I also have my National Academy of Sport Nutrition Fitness Certification and Nutrition Certification. It is my life goal to empower people both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I have been a Reiki master for over 10 years. It is my forward goal to become a psychologist. I'd like to sometime in the near future start attending college to get my psychology degree, however long that may take. But ultimately, I want to be the high tide that raises all ships. So that is what the initial idea for this podcast is going to be about. This podcast is called. Uh, it's awful that I can't remember right now. We had thrown around a couple of ideas, but I think right now we have common property.
Yeah.
So, one of the four founding fathers of Stoicism states that intellect is the greatest of common property between all people. And so that is my goal to create some sort of common property and hopefully help the individuals grow as a whole. I've always been the proponent of two types of people in this world, two types of intelligent people, I suppose. People that want you to know that they are smart, and people that want you to be smarter. So, for anybody that has listened to anybody spout rhetoric or information, you can definitely tell the difference between the two people. So, I am hoping to be the one that shares information in order to grow other people's intellect. So, with that, we're just going to chat for a little bit. We can talk about some of our ideals and the way that we kind of perceive things, perceive life in general. We can go off on little tangents, and I just want this to be kind of an organic conversation between Amar and myself. Amar is doing my video editing for this as well. So, again, I really appreciate and thank you for that. And hopefully, we can turn this into something that matters and something that we can do full time, do something that, you know, brings people forward, brings people together, and pays our bills, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like, the whole thing is, as long as you do it right. I mean, as as an editor and a producer, as long as you do it right and you give me good, nice, high quality files to edit, we can make anything work.
Right.
Like, as long as I can cut up some TikToks. I mean, I know this guy is gonna have some. He's gonna have some monster TikToks that one of them is just gonna like send, and I just he's got that thing, you know, like you can't really describe it, but it's there. That guy, like, folks, I mean, this, I worked for him. I mean, folks, I don't know how much we want to get into it. This might be, you know, a little bit of
Yeah.
inside baseball, but oh my God, it was a,
Well,
oh,
as long as we're not sharing any personal information, we can give anecdotal stuff. I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, life should be an open book, right? I believe that we should live a life that we should not be scared or ashamed to spread the information onto anyone else. So, you know, what the way I look at it is what could go wrong? What really could happen by expressing what I've done in my past, where I've been, who I am, you know, things like that. I'm obviously not going to share like home address and things like that, but like, you know, anecdotal experience of the places I've been and the things that I've done where you can consistently find me, that's, you know, public record. That's common property.
yeah, and I think my whole thing is the whole point of what we have here is just you can make anything work. I mean, there are so many different perspectives, and it's just you can go down the spider web. I mean, it just goes and goes and goes, and you're like, oh my God. And then once your voice is in that soup, then your voice is in the soup.
Right.
Are you ready for that? Are you ready
Definitely.
for that? It's
And so, one of the things that I've been contemplating recently is about, you know, the idea of how people say when you do what you love, you never do a day's work in your life. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. That, and ultimately, like, you know, the Stoics teach us that work is necessary. Like, to work is to live. When you have nothing to strive for and you have nothing to work for, is when life essentially dies for you. And so, being able to keep on task and keep moving forward towards the future and trying to create something that not only am I passionate about, something that I love and something that I really wish to be fortuitous with. And I think that's important for a lot of people. I was listening to Joe Rogan on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how these people, how they're so, you know, when you say it out loud, when you say, "Oh, I'm gonna be a star, I'm gonna be famous, I'm gonna be huge," and blah blah blah, you know, those are the people that typically don't ever make it unless they already have connections or something that they've done otherwise to get themselves in that situation. The people that do it for the sake of doing it to become famous, they rarely are the ones that become successful. It's the people that, you know, you can feel the integrity and you can feel the discipline and you can feel, you know, the common the important virtues that provide, you know, something greater than just monetary value, or, you know, and that's you know, the future generation, that's kind of one of my biggest problems with that, is that there is no integrity and um, there is no honor with the newer generation. Everyone is so concerned about making that dollar and being the next TikTok star that, you know, it breeds a sense of carelessness for having integrity. So the people that are drawn to those types of things are the people without integrity, and they are unfortunately becoming the next generation and the masses.
I think literally this has
Thank
been
you
my
for the
whole
comment,
philosophy.
the hub admin.
Oh,
I
oh,
appreciate that. First time chat, welcome. Voluptuous, I like
at
that.
the what minute mark? Wow,
Yeah.
that's fast, dude. That's nice. I always say that in my streams. I'm like, oh, at the 1 minute mark. Like, I don't know. Anyway, like, I think my whole thing has been like, I see all these TikToks where it's just garbage. You're just dumping garbage into the void, and then one of them gets 1 million views and
Well, I
gets
mean,
500. But my whole thing is like, uh, I have always tried to be like the only reason I've ever wanted followers on TikTok is because they gate it. Like you need 10,000 followers to make playlists
right.
so that I can finally have this record that says, "Oh, do you like racing games? do you like Infinite Runner? Like, do you want to play a racing game that never ends and it's a constant stressor and it just puts you in this flow state? Here's 15 of them. Or here's a couple different games where you're just kind of moving
Right.
around and having fun, or flight simulators or VR games. And it's like,
See, and
for
that's the
TikTok to do
difficulty
that
that I
sucks.
find with this situation in general. You know, the social media aspect of it is that you kind of have to succumb to the lesser evil for the greater good. That you have to provide content that is attention deficient. You have to be able to provide these small clips and snippets that are going to grab people's attention, and you have to kind of succumb to the way that the media exists rather than, you know. And there are certain content creators that do come out with, you know, integral content and things that are worth listening to. One of my favorites is there's a channel called Modern Wisdom that, you know, I rarely see. The only times that you see clips or, you know, like the YouTube shorts that he comes out with are just partial interviews with some of the people that he's doing his interviews with. There's not a lot of like clickbait or things like that. Another one that I really appreciate is oh, okay, Ben. Well, love you too, dude. Thanks for stopping by, and we're gonna be doing these once a month to start. I'm going to be having guests on. We're going to be talking about all different kinds of stuff. This is a good segue before you get out. Um, so the whole purpose of this channel is to try to grow intelligence, like I said. And so my intention is to have no holds barred. You know, I want to talk about everything. I want to learn everything, and I want you know, everyone else to become as smart as they can. So I'm going to be having guests on here. I have a couple lined up already. We're going to have a cybersecurity specialist. We're going to have not a Christianity specialist, I suppose. We're going to be talking about some religion on here. I have a couple of BDSM experts and you know, things that make people tick. I want to talk to people about how they feel about things, and we can get into the psychology of stuff, and you know, that's kind of the aim for it. If you ever want social media marketing education, let me know. I got you 5 million organic reach on my Facebook. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to pick your brain um, with whatever time you have. I would love. So, another thing that, you know, kind of will make this work, and Amar and, you know, some other people that I have around me, community. I have spent a lot of my life surrounding myself with people that are, you know, successful in one way or another. They have abilities and thoughts and feelings that, you know, are important to me. And, you know, developing and creating a community around people that have these certain abilities. Like Amar has his video editing, and you know, I have my friends that have their own specific. Like, I have a buddy that's a lawyer that I'll probably get on here at some point, and we can talk about law and the intricacies of certain types of law, what kind of law there is. But, you know, community is what's going to help to grow this. You know, word of mouth, and people giving their fair share of what they have available and what they can do if they want to be a part of this. If not, no pressure, not a problem. You know, I'm a smart enough man to know how to ask questions, so I'll get there eventually. But, you know, like I said, higher tide raises all ships. All right, Ben. Well, thanks for stopping by, dude. I will one the first monetary value that I ever get from this podcast, I will buy you a Chipotle burrito. Scout's honor. All right, man. Take it easy, and I'll text you sometime soon. Yeah. So we're gonna do this thing, man. We're so just to give you guys a little bit of insight. The reason why this whole thing came about is I used to live in Washington State for 36 years, pretty much my entire life, and we drove across the country. to North Carolina. We ended up moving to North Carolina at the end, like 3 days after Christmas is when we arrived. And I had sort of an epiphany, or, a shifting of gears that, I've been working. Amar was my employee at Batteries Plus, and I had been a manager at the Batteries Plus in Bellevue for a little around 5, 6 years or something like that. And my whole life was uprooted and changed. I've been the person that I am for a long period of time. The virtues that I have, the things that I tout, the focus, the integrity, the intelligence, I try to be a teacher at heart, and I figure I've always wanted to do this. I have a couple of other facets that I'm doing. I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to record an album. I'm a big musician. I've been playing music for pretty much my entire life. And, I've decided that the time is now for this. I switched careers. I've become a fitness professional now, and I want to spend my waking hours doing what's important to me, and that's creating a legacy, uh, helping my friends and family to rise up and be not only content in life but content with life. That there's a story that I heard about this lawyer goes to this fisherman, right? And the fisherman is sitting on the dock fishing for his fish, and the lawyer asks him, well, how many fish do you catch a day? He said, well, I usually catch about 10 or so. And he says, and you do okay with that? He says, yeah, I sell them to the local market and they pay me for them, and keeps food on the table, and it helps me to keep my house. And so the lawyer asks, well, what do you spend time doing with the rest of your time? He says, well, I go out for hikes and I spend time with my family, and I love to take naps and watch the sunrise, and I spend a lot of my time loving life. And the lawyer says, well, I have a friend that could help you with marketing, and if you spent a little bit more time catching more fish, you could spend about 7, 8 hours a day out here catching fish, and you could sell those fish and gain more overhead, so you could buy a larger business. You could build up your business and sell your business, and you could really make a lot of money from that. And the fisherman says, well, how long do you think that would take? And the lawyer says, well, probably about 10 to 15 years, and then once you build your business, and then you can start using that money to build a bigger empire. And the fisherman says, well, then what? He says, well, then you'll have a lot of money and you can do whatever you want. You could buy yachts, and you could go out and spend all this money. And the fisherman says, well, then what? He says, well, then once you make enough money, then you can settle down and you can spend time with your family and spend time with your kids and sleep in if you want to. And fisherman looks at him and says, well, I think I'll keep the life that I have right now, because it sounds like that's a whole lot of work to just have what I already have. And the value of that story is to emphasize that people should be happy with the moment, with what they're doing. They should be, intrinsically involved in the now, instead of being so hyper focused on and fixated on how they can grow and what they can do. So that's kind of my goal, is to not only empower people to make decisions that are right for them, but to be able to identify those decisions and stop focusing so much on things that are for all intents and purposes not very important.
I think it's like, I think content creation is at a very interesting like crossroads between that, where it's like you you have this very very straightforward, like, oh, this is a performance metric and it's going to give me lots and lots and lots and lots of
Right.
performance metrics and feedback and all this stuff that's going to tell you, oh, you're doing better, or oh, maybe you're doing worse. It's like
And that's the nature of the beast that we've kind of succumbed to, because that's kind of how the internet has just become in and of itself. So, you want to get those clicks, you want to get those searches, you want to be able to, and that's a lot of the problem for that, is that people create so much content in hopes that, like, it's getting those views and getting that famedom is like a dartboard, and the more darts you throw at it, the better chance you have of something sticking. But really, what I want to aim for, no pun intended, is that I want to aim for quality content that people are going to find. I don't just want to throw a bazillion tiny darts. I want to throw, one big dart and see what happens from that. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Maybe it'll be found in the archives 500 years from now, when you know certain things are lost and others are found. And it's more of just creating the legacy in and of itself, doing the work for the sake of the work to be done, not for the outcome. It's the one of my favorite songs by Rush. The lyrics are, the point of departure is not to return. So it's the journey that's important to us.
And I think like it's so funny, like from like a producer editor perspective, for me to be like, well, there's quality in terms of like doing good things and and helping people learn, and then there's like, you listen here, dude. I want all your audio tracks separated and I want all the video tracks separated. I'm an editor at heart. I'm a producer at heart. So I'm gonna come in like before, like ground day one, like right before we do this. Like right before we did this, I was like, all right, dude, before we do anything, I want to see your test footage.
Well,
And then once we're good to go, then you know that everything you do is gonna be high quality.
and
And
yeah,
that's the
and
thing.
that's part of the importance of it too. And it's a little shameful to see my camera and how my camera looks. It's not my favorite, but I'm also not being hard on myself, because this is the first stream. We've only lived here for a month, and I just want to get something out there. I told myself that I would do one a year, or one a month, for the entire year, and I had to make sure that I got this out in January, um, because I want to stay true to my resolution. And you know when people use that word resolution, I feel that it's lost its meaning over the years, because, like, oh, New Year's resolution. But really, to have a resolution is to be resolved in something, and resolve, circles back to that integrity. If you break your resolve, then you have lost your integrity. And I won't fail myself in that regard. That I want to do these things, and it's just work. It's just, how much time do you want to put into it? How much discipline do you have to make sure that you're not sitting on your phone scrolling through social media? Instead, you're doing something worthwhile and valuable. And I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. And when you have your profession and what you're doing with video editing, you have a certain expectation too of quality. And there's beauty in quality, and there's beauty in perfection, and there's beauty in effort. And those types of things really do come through, uh, when you have a higher quality production. Sometimes it's unfortunate that you get some of those YouTube channels out there. We'll take Mr. Beast, for example. He's got a whole production crew, and when you start making money and people start getting your views, then you have, more money to be able to invest in doing these things. But, for me personally, um, I would prefer to do it backwards. I want to share the wealth. So I want to find people that are willing to do this for the sake of the work itself, and then benefit from their labor. That makes sense. It's like, picking the berries before you get to eat them. That you have to do the work in order to get the reward, the result.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's good to just put something out there. It's good to just do it and then just be like, okay, part of it is the journey of like, hey, as long as it looks okay, as long as I can hear what you're
Yeah.
saying,
And as long
it'll
as you're
be
having
okay.
fun, like
Yeah, yeah,
that's really
exactly.
what it's gonna. A lot of it's got to be about is that you want to have fun while you're doing it. Because what's the point of doing anything if you're not enjoying it? Like if and I say that with a little bit of a grain of salt because like sure there are certain things that you have to do that you won't enjoy or things that you should do that you won't enjoy which there's a whole part of your brain that I'll share with you if you haven't heard about that but you know there are things that you have to do because the consequence of not doing them is worse and the consequence of me not doing this is worse than the time necessary and the hard work necessary to make sure it's done.
Yeah, and I think well, and I think my whole thing has always been like, as long like it's so straightforward. You click record, like you do. How long does it take you to prep a stream? How like if you estimate how much time would it take you to put something together that then someone like me as a co-host could go through and be like, uh, okay, what can I add that that Donovan already hasn't added to the playing field?
Well, I mean, you saw the whiteboard for the cybersecurity specialist stream that we'll be having.
Mm-hmm.
There is some pre-production that obviously is going to go into it, and the more I don't know about a subject, the more I'm going to need to research it beforehand. So there's going to be a lot of, back end stuff for certain things that I don't know. And, this is a personal journey for me as well. So having the journey of, learning and basically I'm forcing myself to obtain topics to learn about. So, when I have a guest speaker, like maybe I'll have somebody that is a neuroscientist or somebody that is a the the one hope is to have Jordan Peterson or Dr. Huberman or somebody of accolade, Neil deGrasse Tyson or somebody that you know knows what they're talking about, knows what they're doing. Uh, and there may be certain things like if I have an OBGYN on here or something like that, I have zero knowledge of certain sciences and certain aspects of life itself. I've never done any psychedelic drugs, so having like some sort of Mark Rubin on here, or somebody that has spent their time in the pharmacopoeia industry and or like you know a lot of stuff that I don't know about, and so this is like I said a personal journey for me as well to obtain more knowledge. Trying to find those people and surround myself with that community that you know can raise the tide.
And I think it's like it's one of those things where it's like you can even put together this doc, for people where after each podcast you're like, here's the resources that I went through when I was researching this, and you can say, here's guess what, you're more interested in this topic, boom, here's
Right.
I mean, it could be five. I mean, if you give me five links to put in the description, or give yourself five links to put in the description, I'd be like, oh my god, that's too good. Like I
Well,
would
and
love
see,
that.
that's going to be another intention, and like I said, you have to create content, you have to create those darts in order to get put out there. But I want to create the darts with a purpose. So, on this podcast, we may be talking about a little bit too advanced stuff for certain people. I mean, we're not going to skim over, like, for instance, I'm obviously absolutely going to have a podcast on the human body and fitness and health and nutrition and all the things that I myself am the most expert on. And so eventually, I'm not going to cover what a cell is. I'm not going to cover what a carbohydrate. I mean, I may cover some of that stuff, but I'm not really going to spend a lot of time going too in depth and in detail into the minutia of things. Uh, Primarily because I want to keep it concise with whomever I'm talking, especially if it's some sort of expert that is so far out of the field that the way that they can keep up is with a 142 college class, and I want to have a YouTube channel or some sort of like secondary place or secondary podcast or some sort of secondary thing where we can recap and go through some of the things on the podcast that we talked about, and like you said, provide links and things like that. So it's good that you brought
Not a
that
bad
up.
idea. Yeah. Like I think my whole thing is like the value of YouTube and all these platforms is the assumption that your video will exist as a record for the rest of time.
Yeah,
So it's not the assumption that it will be
as long
successful
as
immediately.
the digital age still exists, all of these things
Yeah,
could be lost in antiquity to a
yeah.
massive worldwide EMP and a religious crusade.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like, save Skynet happening. I think we should be okay to be like,
Yeah,
this podcast should be exist for a while. Like, hopefully, it would outlive you. I mean, if it didn't outlive you, I would be kind of be like, okay, I think the world is fucked at
I'll
that
just do it again, and I'll put it in a book next time.
point. Oh,
And
we could
that's another
transcribe it.
thing is yeah, the these types of things they can lead to other things too. So we are a culmination of our existence and our experiences. So all we are are made up of the things that we like and we dislike. So having these conversations and consistently talking like this is going to spurn other things like maybe a memoir one day or some sort of some sort of tangent that exists that we can't even fathom or know about yet.
Well, I mean, isn't that the whole point of the podcast though? You just do it.
Just do
You
it
just
to do
do
it,
it.
man, because
Yeah,
that's what
come
you want
on,
to do.
man.
And
Yeah.
that's what I
Who
want
doesn't
to
love talking?
I want to empower people to do those types of things in their lives too. Like, man, you're pissed about your environment, you're tired of living in your parents' basement, you're tired of going to the same fucking job every day, you're tired of doing all of these things that you just don't want to do, but you continue to do them because you don't see another solution. And I want to implore and to empower people to spend some time thinking about what to do, because all too often people are just so ready to throw their hands in the air and say, well, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and I could be living in a ditch somewhere, or they think of the worst possible scenario about, like, being happy with where they're at because there could be something worse. But it's only because I feel like there's a certain amount of laziness that exists because people don't have the discipline or the wherewithal to be able to look at themselves, just like truly sit down without their phones, without their video games, without their books, without their vices that keep them away from looking inward and saying, A, is this the choice that I really want to be making? B, is there a better choice that I could be making? And C, if there is, why the fuck am I not making it? And identifying those things that are toxic in our lives and things that we should and shouldn't be doing, and just stop doing it. Find a way to just stop doing it, because it's killing you. It's killing all of us. The things that we dread doing, the things that we shouldn't be doing that we do, and we know that there's a better way to live life always, and it just depends on how much you want it. There are certain circumstances, and I definitely have sympathy for those people that are born into a situation or live in a situation, or exist in a situation that they cannot escape from, mainly children and people in squalor. Like, another one of my wishes and hopes and dreams is that this podcast can raise enough money, that I can support those types of people, trying to get those people out of those terrible situations, or creating things that, you know, foundations and nonprofits and not for profits and things that I can try to do with my life that can help those people that can't help themselves. Because I want to use, white privilege or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's not. It's just work. It's just gumption. It's just the desire to do this thing for no reason other than, I've always felt like it's my life's imperative to improve other people.
And I think it's like all I was thinking was like, this just reminds me of being in Boy Scouts, and you're in this Boy Scout troop where everyone you've ever met, everyone you've ever loved, and had a lot of like emotional value for, they're all an Eagle Scout, and so it's this thing where it's like, no, you're doing this,
Right.
and and the whole mentality through all of that stuff was like, listen, this needs to get done, and it was never like it was never hesitation, it was never like oh, should I make this change in my life? It was like, where are we at? And then you say,
Change is a
oh, this needs to
constant.
get done.
That's
Yeah.
change is that's one thing that you can always rely on is change. Change is the one constant in this world, ironically enough. Uh, and mentioning the Boy Scouts, you had a community around you. You had people to empower you, to lift you up, to say you can. Not only should you do this thing, but you absolutely can. Because what's the worst that happens? You fall, you fail, you miss the target, you miss the mark. But, again, in and of itself, it's the journey. It's the decision to be made. It's, every change, positive or negative, has comes with pain and discomfort. And it's not necessarily about getting out of your discomfort or getting out of your comfort zone. It's expanding your comfort zone. So, like, I've done streaming in the past. I used to play Counter Strike semi professionally for a long time. And I used to, do streaming for like Destiny and Final Fantasy 14. And I did Brawl Stars for a while. And, so I'm comfortable in front of a camera, but I've never bared my soul like this, to the entire world. Anybody can look at it and see it for what it is. That, this is a new experience for me, and it is frightening and it is, a little bit jarring, but at the same time, like, it is just what's to be done.
And yeah, I think the whole thing is like, hey, as long as you do it right, and as long as you're honest about your perspective, and you're being sincere about what you're saying, I think it's like it'll become very straightforward very quickly. Like, I think you'll just kind of, I've always found that anytime I've had to do something where I'm like, oh, I want to try this, you just do it once, and then you're like, oh, I'll do it again, and then you do it again, and it's like, oh, that wasn't as scary, that was not as bad as I was ever thinking, and then you're like, oh, now I'm in the deep end, and you're like, and then you're way deep into it, and you're like,
Right.
uh-oh, I have a problem, and then now you have this little problem to solve. And for content creation, it's very like, like Bob the Builder esque level of, oh, I have a weird issue. Like, I was talking, I don't know, I think I was talking to you about the audio issue that I was
Mm-hmm.
having, but I think it's like, it's very like, it's something that you can break down into bite-sized pieces. And I think part of what you learn in Boy Scouts is like, you learn this thing called the SMART goal. And the SMART goal is this more, it's an acronym, but it's also more of a way to show people that, like, hey, if you want to get something done, part of it is you put out this plan so that you're saying over and over to yourself, this is how I'm going to do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I
Right.
can do it in this way. I can do it this fast. You're not just putting a goal to paper. You're not just making it real. You're not just putting it down. You're also putting it down in a way that shows you, like, okay, this is when I want to get it done by. You set a deadline. You say, like, okay, this is how I can do it. I want to make sure it's not too crazy. It's all these basic things that are like, what it's really doing is teaching young kids that, like, hey, wake up. If you want to get something done, do it.
Right.
Do it.
So for our viewers out there, do me a favor and look up what the acronym for SMART is.
Uh,
I'm pretty sure it's
do you
like
know it?
sustainable. Um, What's M?
No, no, you have to guess all five, and then I'll tell you what they are because I remember it instantly. I can give you the edge method
I
too
want to
if
say
you
it's like
want.
manageable. Um,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll give you points for that. What was the first one again? Say the first one again.
sustainable,
No, no points. No points.
achieve or like attainable or achievable,
That's points. That's 10 points.
reasonable, and
Close. I'll give you a couple points for that.
something with like time. Like you
Yeah,
can
you nailed it. That's 10 points. Okay, so you scored pretty good. You got like over 50%. Yeah, so it's specific, measurable,
specific, yeah.
achievable, relevant, timely. So some of them are a little bit esoteric, like specific and relevant. Or it's more like targeting what you want to do. So it's specific and relevant are more about
Right.
breaking
Well,
down a larger like
right.
vision into smaller parts that you can more manageably handle, and that's also like attainable, is like you're not going to set some huge bombastic goal that you would never achieve in the first place
Hmm.
because you're some arrogant 20-year-old.
Well,
Not speaking for anyone in
yeah,
particular right
and
now.
specificity is important too because you can't just say, "Well, I'm gonna." That we do that a lot. We use the SMART goals for our clients in the fitness industry. Is like, hey, you want to get toned and lose body fat. That is not a specific goal. That's a terribly unsmart goal because it's aimless. You want a thing, but you don't know how to get it. So it's like a child saying, "I want that toy." And so what you're doing is you're just asking your parents for that toy instead of saying, "Okay, well, I'm going to go mow 10 lawns. I'm going to earn $50 and I'm going to go purchase that toy because I'm going to ask my parents to take me." Creating a flow chart or like a pathway through the weeds in order to get to your specific area. So instead of saying, I want to be an internet superstar, that's an unobtainable goal without smaller micro goals. I want to have 8% body fat and I want to bench 500 pounds. Like that's a super. Like those are dreams, and it makes me laugh because my friend Steve, bless his family, his wife has a thing that sits on top of their toilet that always makes me laugh. It says "Dream until your dreams come true," and it's one of those like you buy it from Target and it comes in a 4 pack and it says like "Live, laugh, love." But and it's inspiring and it's quaint, but every time I read it I'm just like, no, that's not the right message because you can't tell people to just dream and then their dreams are just going to come true. Like, no, you have to work hard, you have to work long, and you have to work specifically, you have to work with intention.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is where like if you're serious about your dream, then it becomes this journey that it becomes bigger than graduating high school. It becomes bigger than graduating college. It's like you are on this path where you're like, I'm gonna be a doctor or
Right.
whatever, and you're like, okay, this is 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever years in the making, and so then it becomes this not just a dream, not just a series of dozens of goals. Like, oh, if I fail this semester, I'm out of med school. Like
Right.
I'm thinking from a
And for those people
medical
that
school
don't know,
perspective.
he's
Yeah.
talking specifically about, I presume you're talking specifically about medical doctors, because
Yeah, yeah,
anybody can be a doctor at anything. It's called your doctorate. So,
yeah, and that's why I think like in the abstract, like I'm literally just trying to give an example of like
yeah.
something that's difficult and long and hard. Like you get the like it becomes like it's it starts as like, oh, it's you're like, oh, I've got this, and then you run into snags, and then it becomes this personal journey that you go through, and then you have these teachers on your journey, and you have all these people that are there to support you, and then what you're really talking about is you're really talking about like, I mean, it ends up being like you know that I say it too much when we were working together. It becomes like your character arcs. It becomes your like, oh my God, I remember that arc, when I was drinking too much and blah blah
Right.
blah and all that stuff. And it's just this hilarious thing where like it's stories to tell, and as long as you're safe, as long as you come out of it okay, and you're ready to keep moving forward, it's like your goals
Well,
may
and
change, but you got to keep trying.
like I said, like you have to create goals that are obtainable. Like you have to stay on task, and you have to, and for a lot of people, they don't stay on that path. They falter, they vary in ways, and they make excuses for themselves, and they, well, I had this going on, or I had this thing to do, or I just don't. And if your heart's not in it anymore, then fine, but don't do that thing where you feel ashamed or you feel disappointed, or you know because everyone makes choices every day, or they choose to not make a choice. But another Rush lyric: if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And choosing not to make a decision is still a choice. Choosing to stop doing what you're doing because you don't like it is your choice. If I decide one day that this podcast is not for me, and I'm spending too much time doing it because, for instance, maybe I'm not spending enough time with my family, and my family is the most important thing in this world to me, that I will stop doing it, because the consequence of not doing it is greater than the consequence of doing it at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's like that's where your whole point is, like you go through and you want to take it seriously and you want to do it as best as you can. And I think the point is like it's good to see. Like it's good to see you get into it and really be like, all right, we got to do it. And I'm very curious to see the quality of this, and we are going to have notes about this stream. So, in the end, I've always said like part of the process that you go through is, even if you don't end up sticking with it for the rest of your life, I would hope you gain some value out of this. Like, I can still do live production. I can still be your producer if I ever cease to do whatever I do. But, I still have these skills. I'm still able to think about things from a different perspective and offer something to maybe another life choice that will still add value. But,
Mm-hmm.
there are things like what you ended up doing, where complete life shift to now becoming a fitness professional. And I'm curious to pick your brain about it, but I'm hoping it's going well.
Yeah, it's actually going pretty darn good. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. It's different. It's definitely different than just being a retail slave. Um, but it's nice. It's empowering. Being able to help people that are there for a specific purpose, that want your help, that want to improve, that want to grow. It's in that same vein that I'm living my life's modality by, is that people are there to make a difference in their life, and they're coming to the professional in order to do it. And they're saying, hey, I'll give you this money if you just help me achieve what I want to achieve. And what I did with that, so I used to be wildly obese when I was about your age. I was 23, 24, 25, all the way from, when I, pretty much after I hit puberty. I just never stopped eating. And I always ate the things that made me feel good, things that were tasty and things that I enjoyed, rather than, eating what was right for me, and eating to satisfy some sort of desire, dopamine chasing, or there's a lot of reasons why people eat the things that they eat, um, and lack the moderation. Because I still eat things that I enjoy. I still eat a lot of things that satisfy my cravings. But you know, there was a point where I got so overweight that I had to, you know, take a deep breath, suck in my gut, hold my breath in order to bend over to tie my shoe. And you know, there was just one point where I was going through the process, and I was just like, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of doing this thing that I just make myself so miserable for, and I just didn't know how to get out of it. So that's the thing that I did. I went to my local gym, I found a personal trainer, I gave him a bunch of money and said, "Teach me how to exercise. Make me thin. Make me healthy." And instead of just closing my eyes and closing my ears and turning my brain off and going through the motions, I paid him to teach me and empower me to then follow. And out of doing so, I gained a great love for personal health and personal fitness. The education that I gained from how food affects us, and the things that we put in our body, we really are what we eat. So if you're going to eat Culver's and you're going to eat McDonald's and you're going to eat all this processed bullshit all the time, you're going to get cancer. Like, it's pretty obvious that if you're eating things that don't naturally come out of the ground, your body is going to turn into something that doesn't naturally derive from things that naturally come out of the ground. It's very simple science, and people are they're they're willfully naive, and that is, I think, one of the worst qualities of humanity, and especially the United States today, is the willful naivety of ignoring what they choose to do and ignoring the consequences of that. Like, parents letting their kids watch YouTube for 8 hours a day because they don't feel like playing with them, or taking care of them, or they don't want to hear them ask for toys and whine and bitch at Target. So instead they just slap a screen in front of their face and let them do their thing while the parents do their thing for the task that they're there to do, instead of teaching these kids values. And then they go on to become 16, 17 years old, playing Call of Duty, calling other people the most inane of names, and constantly paying attention to their phone and TikTok. And it's just a terrible cycle that started to exist because people are not willing to do what's right. They're not willing to do what's necessary because they just want to float through life with this ignorant sort of, but and it's ironic that a lot of these people are also woke, that they have this propagandized agenda drilled into their heads that X is bad and Y is good, and you should believe Z because they have this degree. And but people aren't willing to do the research themselves. They just want to read the headlines of news stories and take it as fact. Or that's a rabbit hole. That's a whole rabbit hole for a whole nother episode. But I want to be the social justice warrior against social justice warriors. You know what I mean? I want to be I'm the fucking Deadpool of social justice warriors. That I want to empower people to get off their fat, lazy asses and go do something. Just do it. And, Shia LaBeouf said it great. A little bit in the wrong direction, but, he's got a point. We just need to go out there and do it.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I mean, I feel like I always get afraid of this point in your life where you stagnate, where you're just either doing the same thing over and over again, or you slowly do less and less. And you're like, oh, I'm so tired, and I always get so afraid of that. Where I'm like, I'm working this job, and I still have time to come home and do a whole second job and do all this stuff and keep working at it and keep trying to crack the code and keep hammering away at it slowly but surely, because it's important to me to like keep up with this dream that I've had and this opportunity that I have. And I think that's why, like, I think it's crazy. Like, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to make content because it's something that I can be passionate about when I'm not, like, uh when I'm not at work,
I don't
and you can kind of
and
separate that.
I don't agree with that. I think that for the masses, it's a shameful desire because they're fucking lazy and they just watch it all the time. They see these people blow up on TikTok and they it's a pie in the sky. They go, "Well, I could do it. If that person did it, well, I can do it." And it's like if all you watched on TV or all you watched on YouTube or all you watched on these things are professional bodybuilders or you watch, Olympic athletes. That's your thing. You say, "Well, I'm going to become an Olympic athlete." Like, no, you're probably not because you're not willing to go into the gym or you're not willing to go into the gymnastics or you're not willing to go pole vaulting or track and field. You're not willing to do those things for 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day and dedicate your entire life to do that. And for the masses it just doesn't really happen. You have to have the desire and you have to have the drive and you have to have the wherewithal to be able to grow and incorporate what you learn into your practice instead of just beating a dead fucking horse every day.
Yeah, and I think it's like I think you got to do something. Like you got to take something seriously and set a goal and put some effort into it, and eventually it'll become a journey. And and if you want to change paths, then you might end up changing paths. But it's like in the end, it costs money to live,
Right.
so you got to make money somehow.
Well, yeah, you have to
And
make your ends meet first, of course, because
yeah, and that's
you're
the whole
not,
thing.
starving artists. And that's been a thing for a long time. Living in your parents' basement. I mean, if that's the choice that you want to make for your life, then as long as it can be sustainable for as long as you can do it, do it, but do it with integrity. Like, if I had to do it over again when I was younger, of course, I would make a lot of different choices with the time that I had. And, but all of these choices have led me to where I am now. So, with the inability to go back in time, right now is when I have to start. Everything that you choose to do has to be right now because you can't do it yesterday. You can't do it 10 seconds ago. So you might as well start now. And if you don't want to start now, then you just must not want to do it very badly. Or you have some sort of obstacle that you cannot get over. And so you have to, and that's again with that inward thinking and that inward looking like, is it really an obstacle? Like, say I want to donate $1 million to the Red Cross Foundation. Can't do it right now. That is an obstacle for me because I don't have $1 million to give them. But could I make little micro goals in order to find a way to do that? If it was important enough to me, if donating to the Red Cross was my number one focus, donating $1 million was my. I mean, first of all, having a specific goal of $1 million is a little bit ridiculous because, you should just donate to them if that's what you want to do. The numerical value, the 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 task is not to have a specific goal in mind like that. The task is to do the thing that brings you joy. And so if donating to the Red Cross is going to bring you joy, you know, $1 million to somebody who doesn't have it is a noble cause, but it's also ridiculous. Donating 10% of what you have is also a noble cause, and that is a bit more obtainable. So, again, smart goals. And you have to be reasonable with yourself. Like, is this obstacle that is in your way from doing the thing that you want to do truly an obstacle that, you know, potentially you might have placed there yourself? Or is it an obstacle that you haven't identified or come to terms with? Is there a different obstacle that you could clear that will help to remove that other obstacle in the future? Like, I think it's funny when people say the anecdote that anything is possible, because no, not anything is possible. That, you will never be able to fist fight a tornado and win. I'm sorry, but most things are possible. And I resonate with that a lot more, because I feel like when you say anything is possible, that just sounds like a pipe dream. That just sounds like, motivational words to get you to wake up in the morning. But when you say most things are possible, then that brings a little bit of a human aspect to it. Because we all know that nobody's perfect and not everything is possible. But if most things are possible, then most things can be done. It just depends on how hard you want to work at it.
It's so funny you say that, and instantly I'm like, that is exactly what he would have said if we were still working together. He would have been like, listen, sometimes phrasing things a little bit differently adds so much more weight and so much more power to something that for most people they would be like, oh, it's basically the same thing. But you change a few things and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a
Because
minute, what did you say?
words, that's another big thing in my life, and I try to teach my children, is that words matter. You use your words specifically in order to get across your purpose better. So, if you say, I'm tired, okay, well, are you tired of something, or are you physically exhausted? Like, those two things, the tired is very vague. And people use this vague. I love communication. I love talking. I love specific communication. I love language. I love, the all the nuances between languages and translations. Like, you know one of my pie in the sky goals is to learn Aramaic and read the Bible, the Christian Bible, in the language in which it was written, because I feel like there is a lot of meaning that is lost in translation when people are again too lazy to get a point across specifically. And there's a lot of interpretation that happens that causes a lot of fights in marriages, and it causes a lot of disappointment in the workplace, and it causes a lot of people to be unhappy with a certain situation because they just didn't communicate better.
And I think that's why, like, when I went to Wazoo for 1 year, I went for communications because I was like, hey, I like writing. And I think it has a lot of value to be good at communicating because I've always found that communicating kind of ends up being valuable anywhere. And if
Right.
you're good at communicating, then you can add value to anyone's situation. And if whether that's parsing information or whatever it is, like communication is what got us to where we are today. Generations and generations and generations of people who have worked together and been able to come to terms on things and
Right.
and understand each other and work together, and like the ability to help people work together and help people learn and add value to other people's lives is just like you could write 1,000 books about that. You could talk about that topic and go into it for
And there are
oh,
lots of books about that. So I will. We have reached an hour now, so I will impart a couple of books that I think people should read. Or I mean, I'm a huge audiobook person. I don't. I listening to other people who are smarter than I am is an important task of mine, but I don't have the time to read. So I spend my time doing audiobooks while I'm exercising or driving, or, I try to fill my time with multitasking, for segue purposes. But, so The Happiness Principle by Jonathan Haidt is probably one of the number one books that I would recommend to people that would listen to. It's like an 8 hour long book, and it has some fantastic information in there about finding your happiness in your current situation rather than striving to obtain this sort of random happiness that doesn't actually exist. Um, Another really good one that I would suggest everyone read is 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan Peterson. That book helped me to understand a lot of the problems that I had in my own life were actually my own doing. And a lot of things that I, have talked about in this episode specifically, about having the gumption to make the changes and recognizing that, parents will always say it best that you clean up your own doorstep before you shit on anybody else's. And, who are you to set the example with words alone? That you need to set the example with your actions, and don't talk about it, don't speak about it, don't tout about it, don't say, hey, look at this thing that I did. Just do it. Just do it for the sake of doing it, and it will get recognized and it will get noticed. Another one more book, and the last one that I will suggest for people to read. So I'm pretty big on Stoicism and the art of. So okay, we'll do two books then, and the Mark Manson method of the subtle art of not giving a fuck. It's very empowering to recognize that once you let go of tiny little things that don't mean anything, that you can really start to focus on what's important for you. But as far as older antiquated stoicism is concerned, the things that have stood the test of time, Marcus Aurelius, the Journal of Marcus Aurelius, is probably the best one that I could suggest for people. Of course, some religious texts are really good too. Siddhartha is another one, the Buddhist document, to kind of see where that came from. But ultimately, yeah, listen to people that are smarter than you. I forget who said it, but it was pretty profound the other day. Is that it was Jordan Peterson. I was listening to a interview that he was doing with Modern Wisdom, and he said you get to pick your peers when you read. That if you choose to read Aristotle and Socrates, or if you choose to read Dave Plicky and the Dogman books and Captain Underpants, like, you are who you hang out with, and you get to pick your peers. So if you choose to read Shakespeare, that's what he was talking about, is reading Shakespeare and having to go back and read Shakespeare over and over again because he didn't understand what he was saying. He chose that for the specific purpose of improving himself and his knowledge and his vocabulary and things that most people aren't going to concern themselves with. He says that Shakespeare's words were pregnant with meaning, and our words nowadays are so linear in explanation, and it's can be frustrating to try to communicate with some people nowadays because they use, and Amar, I love you. They use words like base, or they use, these slang terms that
Hey.
that they come across appropriately in certain aspects, but when certain words, and especially slang words, are used too often, that's where they get lost in translation, because you can't really communicate, and you can't understand, you can't appropriately talk to people. You got to learn to speak their language and not just use your own, because that's where communication errors come in. So I think that's it. I think that's going to be good for now. You have any wisdom to impart on anybody that may be watching this?
No, I mean, stay tuned. As long as it looks good, that's all I care about.
So there was one anecdote that I wrote down here, and I want to audiate this for future, just in case something happens. I want to put it in more places than one. I'd like to do a possible arc about college and schooling for kids that don't have parents teaching them to succeed. So I was one of those people that fell through the cracks. Um, my teachers, I heard it ever since grade school that you don't apply yourself. You're so smart, but you just don't apply yourself. I don't know what the fuck that meant. Being 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. What does apply yourself mean? So I would like to try to find some sort of expert or specialist in uh, getting people grants, or like I don't even know if that type of person exists, but like helping people that are capable, that don't even know what questions to ask. Like they don't know what to do, where to go, and the people that are around them have failed them. So I'd like to try to do some sort of podcast arc on that. So we'll put a pin in that, and we'll start researching some experts that we might be able to communicate with and find out what they can provide.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. And I have What the Stuck on all platforms except for TikTok. I think I'm What the Stuck 0. But recently I got my ex What the Stuck name. So I am What the Stuck on all platforms. We haven't really created anything for uh, Common Property yet, but we will in the future. Once we start coming out with more video, once this video is completed, I'm sure that's going to be kind of the pull of the pin on the grenade to start that. So we'll get this edited, we'll get it sent out, we'll get the channel created, and then we'll start putting out some more content for you guys to sink your teeth into. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.